You're a good person, Darcy, but I think we both know you don't fit where I'm going. 12 words. Craig Weston said them quietly, leaning in close enough that the tenderness of it would read correctly to anyone watching, his hand warm on her elbow, his voice pitched just below public, but not quite private. He had always been precise about things like that. Darcy Holmes stood at the edge of the Meridian ballroom, in a dress she had spent 3 weeks choosing, holding a champagne glass she no longer wanted, and felt the floor of her entire future drop out from under her. Around them, the Chicago Children's Hospital Gala moved and glittered. Chandeliers poured light down on $12,000 flower arrangements. Servers in white jackets navigated trays through the crowd, with the practiced grace of people who were very good at being invisible. Darcy knew most of their names. She had worked with the Meridian's event staff for years, through her position as head bookkeeper for the Ashmore Group's hospitality division, and she had made a point to know who was working each event, the way she made a point to know everything she was responsible for. She had spent 6 weeks preparing the financial back-end for tonight, coordinating pledge tiers, cross-referencing donor records, reconciling silent auction valuations, making sure the hospitality invoices were properly categorized and the catering costs allocated to the right accounts. The work had been meticulous. She was meticulous. It was the thing she was best at. It had not prepared her for this. Craig. She heard her own voice come out steady, which surprised her. What did you just say? He had the grace to look momentarily uncomfortable. Things have been off between us for a while. You know that. His eyes moved once, quickly, toward the cluster of people near the bar. His managing director, a few firm partners, a woman named Lauren, who was sharp-edged and moved through rooms as though they had been specifically designed to accommodate her. Craig's gaze returned to Darcy. I'm being considered for partner. The life I'm building is a different direction than I think either of us expected. She understood then, with the particular clarity that only arrives at moments of complete devastation, exactly what he was saying. Not we've grown apart. What he meant was that she was the wrong decoration for the future he was assembling. She had always been slightly wrong, hadn't she? Too wide at the hip, too loud a laugh, too inclined to order what she actually wanted instead of what photographed well. 4 years of that math, done quietly, somewhere beneath her daily life. I see, she said. She was gripping the champagne glass hard enough to feel her own pulse in her knuckles. You'll understand when things settle. He squeezed her elbow once. The kindness of it made something inside her go absolutely cold. You're a wonderful person, Darcy. Wonderful. Good. The words men used for women they were done with, but still wanted to feel generous about. That's enough. The voice came from somewhere behind her and to the left. Low, unhurried, carrying no particular heat, but somehow filling the space around Craig and Darcy, with the quality of a door being firmly closed. Riker Ashmore had crossed the room without Darcy registering his movement. He was tall, dark-suited, holding a glass of water, and he looked at Craig Weston with the mild, complete disinterest of a man accustomed to evaluating things and finding them wanting. A faint scar ran through his left eyebrow. His hands were otherwise perfectly still. Craig's face changed color. It happened fast. Mr. Ashmore, he managed the name. I didn't realize you were. You were leaving, Riker said. Not a question, not a threat, a statement about what was about to happen. Craig left. Darcy became aware of several things at once. The champagne glass still in her hand, the 100 eyes that had witnessed at least the broad shape of what had just occurred, and the fact that she was not going to cry in the Meridian ballroom in front of the Chicago Children's Hospital donor list. Come outside, Riker said. He didn't touch her. He simply angled slightly toward the terrace doors, and somehow that was enough. The air on the terrace was cold and clean, carrying the smell of the river. Darcy stood at the stone railing and breathed it in carefully. "You know who I am," she said after a moment. "You run the books for the Ashmore Group's hospitality properties. 2.5 years. He stood beside her, hands in his pockets. "Your quarterly reports are the only ones I read without scheduling a follow-up call." She looked at him sideways. "That's either a compliment or an indictment of everyone else." "Both." She turned back to the river. 4 years, she said. Not really to him. He started small, the way they always do. She wrapped her free hand around her elbow. "Maybe try the fish instead. Maybe we should walk more. Maybe this gym, this class, this cut of dress." She paused. He had a whole system for it. Nothing direct enough to be called cruel. So I never called it cruel. I called it support. Riker said nothing. She was already learning, in the 15 minutes of knowing him, that he did this, held space without filling it. It was unusual enough in a man that it almost startled her. "He never once said the ugly word," she continued. "He said healthier. He said your best self. He said, I just want you to feel confident." She made a sound that was almost a laugh. "I spent 4 years becoming a smaller version of myself in all the ways that actually matter, because I was so focused on shrinking in the ways he wanted that I didn't notice what was disappearing." "What was disappearing?" Riker asked. She considered. "My opinions. I stopped finishing sentences if I thought he'd disagree. I stopped ordering dessert. I stopped wearing my red coat because he said it made me look." She paused, like I was trying too hard. "I thought love meant working constantly on yourself for another person." She set the champagne glass down on the railing. "I'm 32 years old and I haven't worn a red coat in 3 years." The river moved below them, dark and unhurried. "You noticed the staff records," Riker said. She blinked at the change of direction. "What?" "When you first took on the River North Properties accounts. Your predecessor's file noted the overnight cleaning team often went unlogged. Management categorized their hours under a general maintenance code." He looked at her with level grey eyes. "You separated them out." She remembered. It had seemed obvious. They needed to be accurately represented in the payroll data. Otherwise, the cost analysis was wrong, and the staff weren't being compensated for overtime. "It was the right thing," he said. "Most people wouldn't have looked that closely." "Most people don't look at the things that don't directly concern them," she said. "I look at everything. It's probably a flaw." "It isn't." She looked at him for a long moment. Chicago threw orange light up at the winter clouds, and in that amber glow Riker Ashmore looked like something assembled from materials that didn't have common names. "Why were you here tonight?" she asked. "You don't attend events in person. I've read 3 years of event communications and your signature is on exactly none of them. I heard you'd be here." The silence that followed was, somehow, not strange. "I should go back in," she said finally. "Cole is going to alphabetize my auction closeout." "Probably. By last name. Almost certainly." She pushed off the railing. Then, despite Craig's words still pressing behind her sternum, despite the champagne glass she'd gripped until her knuckles ached, she laughed. It surprised her. It appeared to surprise Riker too, though he showed it only in a slight softening around the eyes. "You're not what I expected," she said. "Most people find that reassuring." "I haven't decided yet." He nodded, as though that were entirely acceptable, and held the terrace door open. The weeks that followed were not what she would have predicted. Riker Ashmore moved through her professional life with the deliberateness of someone who had made a decision and did not revisit decisions once made. A message on a Wednesday about the River North beverage program. A lunch to review the winter benefits budget structure. A dinner on a Friday that was professionally appropriate in every external measure and felt, privately, like something else entirely. She noticed that he remembered specifics. She had mentioned, once in passing, that the Meridian's catering coordinators itemized at category level instead of per line, which made variance analysis nearly impossible. He had relayed this to Cole without comment. The next event contract specified per line itemization. She found out because Cole sent her the draft with a note that said simply, "Per your preference." She had not known she had a preference until someone treated it as one worth keeping. In November, she met Margaret Holst at a planning session. 61, silver-haired, Riker's director of operations for 17 years, with the comfortable directness of a woman who had run out of patience for indirectness somewhere around 2009. Margaret cornered her near the coffee station and came directly to the point. "He keeps your notes," she said. Darcy set her cup down carefully. "I'm sorry." "The margin notes, the payroll flags, the small recommendations you attach when you think something deserves attention." Margaret studied her with frank eyes. "He has printed copies, organized." A pause. "He showed me one last spring and said it was an example of what genuine stewardship looked like." Another pause. "I've been with this organization 17 years. He has never said that about anyone." Darcy looked at her coffee. "He doesn't perform sentiment," Margaret continued. "When he decides something, it is because he has examined it from every angle and found it worth deciding." She picked up her own cup. "I thought you should know that, since at his current pace, he won't tell you himself for several more months." She walked away, leaving Darcy with the specific, warm, slightly dizzying feeling of a door that had been unlocked for a while, finally swinging open. At dinner, on a Tuesday in December, Riker placed something on the table between them. A small yellow post-it note, pale from being folded once and unfolded many times. Her own handwriting, the efficient half-print she used for quick internal memos. Payroll note, week of March 4. Kitchen and cleaning staff worked RV, 67 hours due to private event overflow. Standard comp will underpay significantly. Recommend additional 200 lash employee from event operational budget. They worked through the night and it should be reflected in their checks. She had submitted that with a payroll package 14 months ago. She had never received confirmation it had been read. "You kept this," she said. "Yes." She stopped. "That's 14 months. Closer to 15 now." She looked at him across the candlelight. "Why?" He was quiet in the particular way of someone choosing words for accuracy rather than effect. "In 15 months of reviewing this organization's financial output," he said, "that note was the only communication I received that had nothing to do with the bottom line. It wasn't protecting the budget. It wasn't legally required. It served no purpose except to make sure people who worked through the night got paid what they deserved." He looked at the note, then at her. "I've been in this business for a long time. I have never once received a note like that. From anyone." Darcy felt something move through her chest like a current. Not pain exactly, but the pressure that comes right before something resolves. "It wasn't extraordinary," she said. "I know you believe that. It was just correct." "Darcy." His voice was very quiet. "Most people are not correct, even when correctness costs them nothing. You were correct in a note that no one would have noticed if you hadn't sent it, on behalf of people no one would have advocated for if you hadn't." He folded the note and returned it to his breast pocket. "I wanted to remember what that looked like." She pressed her lips together. She was not going to cry at a dinner table. "I spent 4 years," she said carefully, "believing the measure of me was how much space I could learn to take up less of." She looked at her hands. "And here you are, telling me the thing that mattered was how much attention I paid to the people everyone else was stepping over." "Yes," he said, simply. "I don't entirely know what to do with that." "You don't need to do anything with it right now." She looked up. "You're very patient for a man with your reputation." Something shifted at the corner of his mouth. "My reputation involves several characteristics. Patience is not commonly among them." "No," she agreed, "it isn't." She looked at him across the candlelight, at this man who was feared in boardrooms and in considerably less legal contexts, who had kept a yellow post-it note in his breast pocket for 15 months because a bookkeeper had asked for overtime pay for the overnight crew. "Okay," she said quietly. He waited. "Okay," she said again. "Not to anything specific, to the whole structure of it, to a decision already made, carefully, by someone who did not make decisions carelessly." He nodded once. The way he nodded when something had been confirmed. Craig Weston made his final attempt at the Ashmore Group's winter charity dinner, which was held, because the universe apparently had opinions, at the Meridian Ballroom again. Almost exactly 1 year from the night, he had arranged her exit from his life with the precision of a man rearranging furniture. Darcy was listed in the event program under coordination and finance. Her name, spelled correctly, in print. She had checked once, and then let it go. Craig arrived as a guest of one of the firm partners. She saw him from across the room and felt, with something close to surprise, very little. Recognition. The distant, clinical sensation of identifying something already reconciled. He came to her anyway, because men like Craig always believed the problem could be reapproached from a better angle. He said the things she had expected. Reflection, fairness, he'd been thinking. He wanted to make it right. His hand moved toward her wrist. She looked at his hand. Then she looked at him, at the man she had organized her entire self around for 4 years, shrinking and apologizing and avoiding dessert and wearing every color except red. And she felt, for the first time, simply finished with the conversation. Craig. Her voice was quiet and entirely certain. "I know what this is." She didn't step back. She didn't need to. "I spent 4 years believing the space I took up was the problem. I have spent the last year learning that it wasn't. Not 1 day of it." She let him hold that. "You coming back now doesn't change any of that. It just confirms it." She removed his hand from her wrist herself. Not with anger. With the easy, practiced motion of someone setting down something she'd been carrying too long. She turned and walked toward the stage, because they had asked her to speak, because her name was in the program, because she had earned the right to stand in a room without apologizing for being in it. At the podium, she stood up straight. She thanked the donors by name. She thanked the catering staff who had been in the kitchen since 5 in the morning. She thanked a woman named Carol, who had set every table in the room that evening and had been with the Meridian for 11 years, and was, as far as Darcy was concerned, the most under-acknowledged person in the building. The room laughed warmly, the way rooms laugh when someone says something true. When she came down from the stage, Riker was waiting at the bottom of the steps. Not with ceremony, not with an audience. Just there, the way he was nearly always nearby now, in the particular way of a man who had decided where he intended to stand and did not reconsider positions once they were taken. "You didn't need me," he said. "No," she looked at him, "but I wanted you here anyway." He offered his hand. She took it. Outside, Chicago did what it always did, enormous and cold and entirely indifferent to individual human stories which Darcy had always found perversely comforting. The city did not require her to be smaller. The river below didn't care about the number on a scale. The amber-lit winter sky above the buildings kept its own vast council. She stood beside Riker Ashmore, the boss of the Ashmore network, feared quietly and respected without exception, a man who had kept a handwritten post-it note in his breast pocket for 15 months because a bookkeeper had fought for the overnight crew in a footnote. And she did not fold herself inward. She did not soften her presence or drift behind him, or wonder whether she was taking up too much of the frame. She stood exactly as large as she had always been. And for the first time in longer than she could clearly remember, every inch of it felt entirely, irrevocably her own.